Hello, I'm Christoph, and I am your guide to the human brain and nervous system. Today, we're going to learn about the neuron, an important brain cell that takes in and puts out signals. So when I see a pen, the light hits my retina. The retina sends a signal to a neuron right behind the eye, which sends a signal to a bunch of other neurons, which sends a signal to a bunch of other neurons, which sends a signal to a bunch of... We have 100 billion neurons in the human brain, designed by evolution to fold over and wrinkle and just hold these complex networks of neurons. So I can look at that, boom, hits my eye, goes into this network, and I realize it's a pen, it's an object, it's upright, it's this far from me. Rich network of neurons. But how does that firing happen? What does it actually look like if we zoom way into the one neuron there behind the eye, or one of the neurons along the way, or one of the neurons that is sending the messages out to my lips right now to make the sounds that I'm making while I speak to you? Let's zoom in. Let's look at a neuron. Let's start with a nucleus. Every cell has a nucleus, and we're going to review just a titch of cell biology. What is inside a nucleus? Every neuron in its nucleus has DNA, copies of all of our body's DNA library. And DNA is deoxyribonucleic, because it's in the nucleus, acid. Why acid? It's like a twisty ladder with rungs. But each rung is made up of two parts. And each part is a kind of acid. Each acid is basically, it's a code to tell other parts of the cell what to do. They're instructions, instruction manuals. It's a library of instruction manuals inside the nucleus. The library are our chromosomes. It's a bunch of these DNA letters glued together into these giant X's. We have 23 different chromosomes. It's like 23 instruction books of how to make all the things a cell needs to do its job. It uses the DNA, the deoxyribonucleic acid, to make amino acids. Stick with me here. Let's get a bigger picture. We got cytoplasm is what the nucleus is floating in. Everything's floating inside a cell. There's always goo. There's always goo. This is the outside of the cell, the membrane. There's all kinds of little, they call them organelles floating around and doing jobs. The cytoskeleton is what keeps the whole thing from collapsing on itself, just like we have a skeleton to keep our meat from collapsing on itself. Skeleton. A cytoskeleton. Cyto means cell. Now, I was just talking about acid. DNA is a kind of acid that tells this guy, this little ribosome, goes into the nucleus, and he reads the DNA and produces, based on what he sees on the DNA, a different kind of acid. It makes chains of amino acids. Critically important. The amino acids, when they're combined in billions of different ways based on the many different sequences of code on our recipe books of our chromosomes, which took like over 10 years for some of the smartest geneticists in the world to code one set of chromosomes. That was the Human Genome Project in the 90s. In the nucleus of one little cell, there's this library of possibilities of instructions to make amino acids. And amino acids are ultimately, it's what the skin's made of, it's what the eyes are made of, it's what the hair, it's what every part of the body is built out of, molecules made from amino acids. And amino acids do things inside the cells. What things do they do? Let me tell you. The whole function of a neuron is it takes in info, and then it puts out info. And the info it takes in are neurotransmitters, a kind of amino acid molecule. Then it puts out neurotransmitters, another kind of amino acid molecule. Some neurotransmitters are not amino acids. They're not made by cells. They're made by other things. We'll talk about that in another video. Let's move on. This is the intake side of this cell, and it's got a bunch of branches. If you zoom way in, the branches have little branches and little twigs on them, and at each tip of a twig and each little bit of the branch, and sometimes on the body, they are getting inputs from other cells. These branches are the dendrites. Information in the form of neurotransmitters comes into the dendrites. The incoming neurotransmitters are communicating to the cell and saying, should you send out a signal, yes or no? This cell body is called a soma, by the way. Soma, as in somatic, like somatic work, is body work. Soma, somatic. And the output side, where we're sending that signal out and telling the world that we are seeing pens, or maybe it's sending input right out to a muscle and telling the muscle to go flex or dance. This is called an axon. The output is an axon. And like the dendrites, it can branch and have a bunch of branches coming off of it. It can affect multiple things. Dendrites take in multiple kinds of message. Yes, no, this neurotransmitter, that neurotransmitter, another neurotransmitter that's going into the nucleus to tell it to do something new. But the axon, it sends out one message. Many copies of one message. Like each one of these is a different copy, sending it to different neurons, different systems in the brain, but it's just one thing. When the message goes out, the end of every little axon branch is a terminal button. Terminal button. That's where the cell shoots out its neurochemicals. For instance, there could be terminal buttons from one cell, almost touching the dendrites. The space between, that's the synapse. We'll do a whole video on it. There's a lot going on in the synapse. We're getting the big picture, and we're going to zoom into the gap between, for instance, a terminal button and a dendrite, or a terminal button and the soma, or a terminal button and the goo out there. The extracellular goo. There's always goo. Come into the dendrites. Tell the soma, send a signal, don't send a signal. And if the soma hears, all right, more people are telling me to send a signal than not. So here it goes. Poof, it goes out the axon. And there are little cells on top of the neuron cell. Each of these little folded guys that wraps all the way around helps the axon send its message more quickly. You can think of it like the message going down the axon is like a boat going across the water, and it takes a while for it to get it from one side to the other. But because of this myelin sheath, a myelin sheath speeds things up. Instead of the boat going slowly down the axon, it's like a rock skipping across pew, 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 the top of the lake, and it can go pew, wicked fast. Pew, 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 instead of dun, 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 dun. Thank you, myelin sheath, for letting us send our neurochemical signal to the terminal button faster. That's your neuron. What do you want from me? When a neuron is getting information directly from the eye, for instance, or the nose, or the skin, it's a sensory neuron. Neuron. For instance, here's an eyeball. Here's a dendrite. Neuron, and then it sends off its little axon out there. That's a sensory neuron. But there's another kind of neuron, my friends. It's taking a lot of inputs, including this one from over here, and it's given out its outputs to more cells. A network of cells on top of cells on top of cells. No eyes, no muscles. It's an interneuron. Interneuron. They usually have a lot of dendrites, just making a huge web. The way they are looped together and connected and laid out gives rise to this wild, complex experience we call subjectivity. Finally, the neuron that gets all of its inputs, like you do, then it sends its message out to a muscle. But it's going to be a crab claw because I can't draw hands. It's Mr. Crab's arm. He's holding his lucky nickel. It's a neuron sending signals out to the muscles to make them move. Motor neuron. Motor neurons. But they're all dendrites taking in info, getting collected in the soma, going out the axon, down the sheath. Either coming from eyes, or coming from and going to cells, or going out to muscles to make movement happen. Our brain has 100 billion neurons working together to take in sensory inputs, make this world that we're experiencing, and send out motion to the rest of the body. Don't think I forgot about plasticity. They have made tiny little microscopes and put them on the skull of mice. Thank you, mice, for helping science. The microscope's looking directly into the living brain of a living mouse and found that actually these cells, the dendrites, are wiggling and moving and connecting in real time. Okay? And there's like dendrites sending out more little spuds and trying to find another axon to connect with while they're reeling in some other dendrites they don't need anymore. Axons going all like a tail trying to find things. This brain right now, as I'm speaking, as I'm seeing, as I'm thinking, is all the cells are actively moving while sending their electrical potentials. They're moving. Stop myself before I get too excited. The neuron takes in signals, puts out signals in a big network. That's the skinny. Thank you for listening. Be sure to tune in to the next video where I will teach you more about the brain and nervous system.